back to Crimson Glass on YouTube. This is day 5 of Camp NaNoWriMo. I'm going to be making these with a little bit of a lag time. It's the morning here, and I haven't made a video since day 2, which was Thursday. And on Thursday, I had only written the prologue and the first scene of chapter 1. And I said we'll come back when we were done, and then I did not. So the idea is just I'm going to summarize what's happened since the last video I made. And I'm going to try and do this without having to stop 1,000 times for my students' emails. I wouldn't mind stopping for my students' emails if these were emails that could be solved by watching the instructional video I posted. Like, I spent my entire weekend creating videos so that students would like have a way. And I don't mind that they don't sometimes understand the video. I mind that they don't even watch the video. Like, so there's that. Yes, so I'm going to get this done. It's like the 5th time I've tried it, and like I keep getting distracted by students with questions that could be answered by watching the fucking video or reading the instructions. Just like directions, man. Ugh. Anyway, so on day 1, I wrote the first prologue and it went well. And on day 2, I wrote all of the first chapter. So on Thursday, I had written that first scene, and then I made the video. And then Thursday night, I wrote the second chapter. And then Friday, I ended up not being in the mental space where I really wanted to write a lot. So I ended up going back and doing something I don't normally do. I went back and I edited chapter 1 lightly. And I did that mostly because I had sent the first chapter off to Ange, my beta. And, you know, all good except for the part where she's like, I'm like, you know, Elizabeth, I don't really like Elizabeth. And I'm like, I really don't either. Like, I had written her with this like hard edge and like just like this dismissive like attitude, and I'm just like, I had written her in a way I don't normally write her, and I think I was just tired, and I hadn't really figured out her voice yet. And that's really that should be weird. I've written thousands of pages of Elizabeth. How do I not know her voice? And the idea is that I'm just keeping an eye on my emails in case something comes up. The idea is that when you write fan fiction, it has its own obstacles. It is by no means easier than writing original fiction. So anybody who thinks that I am wasting my energy with original fiction obviously hasn't written fan fiction. It's actually kind of harder in some ways. Original fiction, you can creating a world is hard, and creating characters is hard. But also, you know what else is hard? Adhering to a world and creators and characters that people already know. And so that's the kind of the challenge I have in a fan fiction, is I have to make my characters respond to my story, my plot, my ideas in a way that makes sense to, you know, people who watch these characters. Like, the characters have to feel, because like, you know what happens when you watch a TV show and you're like, she would never do that. And I feel that half the time I'm watching soap operas these days, I'm like, people don't know what the characters would never do that. Like, if you can do anything on a soap opera, like, you really can. That's kind of like the cool thing about writing in this genre, is that you can literally, people return from the dead. People who you literally have watched die return from the dead all the time. They even had a story where a lady had an abortion, and then 30 years the kid came back. Like, and that's a thing, like, not that we accepted it, but we're like, all right, we just whistled past it. Like, fine, whatever. Like, this is a genre that's so much fun to write in because you can do everything. But what makes this genre work is the characters. The situations are insane. The characters have to feel real. And so the challenge is that my characters have to do things. Jason, Elizabeth, and all of my other characters have to look like the characters that you watch on the show. And that's a challenge when you get to a series like Mad World, because book 1, book 2, and book 3, that's a trilogy, and I've written almost 750 pages, I guess. It's probably longer than that at this point, of a different world. And by book 3, Jason and Elizabeth are no longer the characters that they were. None of my characters are the people they were in book 1, chapter 1. And that's how it's supposed to work. They're supposed to grow and change. And so I have to both show that growth and change while still keeping them the characters that you know on the show. And so how do you do that? And luckily, I mean, most of the time, if you've got a readership who isn't skipping books 1 and 2, and they're showing up with you for book 3, it makes sense. But as a writer, it can be harder. So like, I'm trying to like walk that line, and the conflict I've given them is definitely a conflict I think is interesting and crunchy, but I don't know that I have nailed all the ways that they would react to that conflict. And I think that's going to be a little bit of a struggle in the early chapters. And so like, I really want to make sure I map that out. And because of the deadlines I've given myself, I'm not so mad that I have to spend a little bit of extra time in these early chapters really figuring out some of my conflicts, because I have a soft deadline of May 15th. That's if I write pretty much almost every day in April, and I only take a couple of days off here and there, I will make good time and I will probably finish around May 15th. If something goes wrong, I get sick, you know, maybe we go back to school and then that first week is like crazy, like lots of things. I've given myself an out of June 15th, which is a lot later than my soft deadline. It's not 2 weeks like it was with Broken Girl. And so that gives me a lot of time to work on this draft. So basically, what I did on Friday was I lightly edited chapter 1. I played around with Elizabeth's tone, and I played around with just the way she was talking about the situation, and it feels better. It's not quite there, but it's better. And then on Saturday, I always knew I wasn't going to write. I always knew that there was a large possibility I wasn't going to get anything written, because this weekend I had a ton of curriculum stuff to work on for this week, and then I had to reread, and I had to read for The Broken Girl, because unfortunately, something I don't like to have happen, the first draft of my next novel is going into revisions at the same time I'm starting the next first draft. I usually don't like to mix the alpha draft and the revisions at the same time, because it's just incredibly time consuming to do both. But it's just how the schedule came out. And so I had to reread the entire thing. It's like 393 pages. And I did that, and I'm ready. And last night I wrote the first scene in chapter 2. I wrote the first 1,000 words. And I'm still not quite there with some of the way the characters are flowing. So I'm going to spend a little time today to kind of figure out the conflict before I write tonight. So that's where we are. There's no problems. Like, I'm not worried about progress. I'm not worried about momentum. I'm not worried about any of that. I think I'm just mostly just trying to nail down some things, because if I nail it down, you know, it'll be easier going forward. And that's ultimately what I want to do. Is this first week should be hard as I figure things out, and then we flow, because the second week is always harder than the first. And that's something I want to keep in mind. So that is where we are. I'm at around 9,400 words, give or take some, which is pretty good. It's like about 3,000 words under where I would want to be to make my 75,000 word goal at the end of the month. But I write 5,000 words in a sitting. So like, and next week I'll be on spring break. So I'm not so worried about that. And 75,000 words is my goal. It's not like I'll be fine. All right. I will see you guys next time. Bye.